Is that a good question?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know.
What do you consider is necessary to have good liturgical music? I think is rather than as. We'll start with that. This is the first one. This is the inaugural interview. This is history making.
Mm-hmm.
Either that or it doesn't mean anything. One or the other. Okay, should we say, let's just say, bless ourselves. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Immaculate Heart of Mary, pray for us. Okay. Okay. Terri Johansson, friend of mine from White Rock, fellow musician. I have two questions. First question, what do you consider is necessary to have good liturgical music? And before you answer that question, just give us a little bit of background, your musical background.
Okay. I'm a convert to the Catholic Church, and I didn't know what liturgical music was until I started hanging out with Catholics, and I got this job directing a choir at a Catholic church. So it's been a very big, lifelong learning curve. And could you say the question one more time?
Okay. What do you consider is necessary to have good liturgical music? So when you say you converted to Catholicism, what were you before that?
A couple of things. I was brought up in the Church of the Nazarene, and then when I was about 12 or 13, my parents decided to become Methodists. And so us three girls, me and my sisters, came into the Methodist church at that point, and we were baptized and confirmed Methodist. And so I had only heard a certain style of music for many years for church, a certain type of hymnody. And then when I came into the Methodist church, I got introduced to a really good pipe organ and a more what I would call a liturgical service. And it was a really spectacularly good organ and good choir.
Where was this?
This was in Denver, Colorado. And I didn't like it though, because it wasn't what I was brought up with. And so my dad was really smart. He gave me the keys on Sunday morning and said, you don't have to go to church with us, but you have to go to church. So
the keys to the car?
The keys to the car.
Okay.
Not the kingdom, not yet. No, the keys to the car. And so I did that. I went to all kinds of different denominations. And in a sense, I felt like I had been ripped out of my home, which was the Church of the Nazarene, and where I felt comfortable and where I felt loved and where I felt like I understood what God was saying to me, to this strange new world. And I didn't really like it off at first. So it was kind of like a slow falling in love with beautiful music and with liturgy. And I guess the next big step was that when I was in the University of Colorado, I met a bunch of Catholics and I started hanging out with them and ended up going to many Catholic liturgies. And it almost seemed like, this is what I've been looking for after all these years of shopping and all these different denominations. And then I also got a job there doing the choir. and I had
with the Catholic Church.
With the Catholic Church, and I had a friend who was a liturgist at that parish. It was the University Parish in Boulder, Colorado, and she helped me do the music. She was, we were very good friends, and I mean, she taught me a lot of things about the Catholic Church, and even starting to do a holy hour once a week, and sitting in front of the Blessed Sacrament, and so it was just sort of like I felt like I was coming out of the darkness, and just little bit by little bit I was getting exposed to light, but I still didn't understand it very much. But she helped me with doing the choir and doing the services for, Holy Week, and every Sunday we did a choir liturgy, and
so choir liturgy, that was just meant a mass with
the
choir.
Right? Yeah. The rest, it was the typical thing in that period in the 80s was most of the masses were guitar masses, but we had one choir mass with an organ. So that's what I was in charge of, and it was.
Was it a pipe
really,
organ or a?
Yeah.
It was.
It was really exciting for me. It was just like I was coming alive, waking up.
And you were the organist, correct? Or?
Not all. We had several organists, but I became being a choir director. I became really fascinated with the organ, so I started taking organ lessons too. At that point. So I guess the thing that I was learning was that you start with the text, you start with the scriptures of the day, and then you think about what music will help bring those words to life for people. And also, I was starting to learn a little bit about chant, though we didn't do a lot of chant.
Gregorian chant.
Yeah. But I was starting to learn that the purpose of the music was to serve the text. So we did all different types of music. And then I went to the University of Notre Dame to expand my knowledge of liturgy, and that's where I met my Lutheran husband. So everybody was really surprised about that when we decided to get married. And so I continued my musical journey through the next many years of marriage. And besides having the music serve the text, I felt that the music would help people to find God. That they would find God in the music itself and in the beauty. And I learned about the Catholic Church being the home of truth, beauty, and goodness, so that all of those things would come more to life because of this.
Okay, so
Christian, you have to be quiet because the bird chirping is going in the other room.
Oh, sorry.
Put the back in the cage, please.
Okay, in 5 minutes. Okay?
No, now. Please.
it's very clear that John Walker said the music comes first, and then the text. Can you reconcile that with what you just said?
I don't really know who he is.
Well, Don Mocro's the one who, the Benedictine monk who discovered or invented the rhythmic method that was developed and then um, perfected at Salem under the direction of Dom Gajard. And so he makes it he's very adamant that the music comes first. So do you think you can so what he's saying is that Gregorian chant is music first. Do you think it can be music first and still have the words take precedent?
I don't feel like I know the
Like
answer.
let's think of Bach.
Yeah.
Okay, let's think of the St. Matthew's Passion.
Hmm.
I mean, nobody thinks of the St. Matthew's Passion or the St. Matthew Passion as text,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Even though Bach is sometimes referred to as the fifth evangelist. So what does that mean?
Mm.
What does that mean when you say that a musician who didn't write any words himself, he just wrote notes, is the fifth evangelist? How do the words relate to or how does the music relate to the words?
Yeah, I have a hard time thinking that Bach didn't think of some text before he started composing.
I don't think he
But-
could have, actually.
No?
Well, he might have. He might have been able to. I mean, sometimes composers do write the music and then put words to it. I mean, that happens sometimes. When you think of Bach, though, it's hard to believe he did that.
Mhm.
I think he probably thought of the words first. I mean, if you're setting the Passion,
Yeah, exactly.
you got to have the words first,
Yeah.
right? And even say Handel's Messiah,
Mm.
he had to have the words first, even though he might have recycled some tunes or movements that were simply orchestral, and then used them in the Messiah. But I don't think he did that willy-nilly. I mean, he might have written something that said, "Hey, that fits well here."
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, I guess I don't really think of Bach and Handel as primarily liturgical composers, though.
What do you think that music kind of provides an expression of the ineffable that's
Yes.
not available in the words themselves?
Well, it certainly enhances the ineffable. It makes it something that we can experience, which I don't think we could without the music.
So how do we experience it? Do you mean like beyond the rational?
Yeah.
So why would we need to express the ineffable?
Well, it's part of the why we go to mass, why we go there, and why we sing, and why we try to immerse ourselves in the texts and in the music, is that it will help us to become holy.
I guess we could stop right there.
Sounds
Well,
good.
yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right there. the getting back to Don Macro, because I love Don Macro. And I don't think I would know chant as well as I do without him. I think what he might be saying is that the music is music, and we can't treat it as if it's simply an adjunct to the words. But that Gregorian chant is primarily music, as the St. Matthew Passion, as the Handel's Messiah. Even you can take the operas of Mozart or Verdi. It is primarily music. It's what people know. People don't say, oh, Verdi, he was a great dramatist. Well, some people might, but most people say he was a great musician. Mozart, they don't say, oh, he was really good at doing things on stage. They might say that, but most people say he was a great musician. And so I think what Don Macro is saying is we're going to notice the music first. And so we have to pay attention to the music. But in the end, again, if you read his method, you can take the same melody, which you have to treat well musically, but if it has two different texts, you're not going to sing it the same way.
Right.
Because the music is elevated because it accompanies that text. But nonetheless, it's still music. So I think he's saying you can't not sing as musically as you can. You still have to be a musician. But you're a musician in service of the words.
Right.
And part of being a good musician, which I think is what you were saying before your chant days, is that the music has to serve the words, but not in a way that it diminishes the music. It actually elevates the music, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I think that's what Don Macro meant. What the reason why he said it's music first is he didn't want people to slough it off as if, well, it's all about the text, and therefore we can be slipshod with our execution of the music. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, I mean, there's a way in which in some ways they're equally important, because the music won't reach the heights if you can't bring the text to the people so they know. I mean, and that's another part that I would like to say about my own history that I didn't really understand until I lived in a foreign country where I didn't speak the language, how important Latin is. Because I would go to church every Sunday in Estonia, and I wouldn't understand the readings, and I wouldn't understand the homily, and I wouldn't understand the words of the hymns. But because I had been brought up on music and been in many choirs and sung the Kyrie and the Gloria, and I knew what those words meant, I could still participate because they did the Kyrie and the Gloria and the Sanctus and the Agnus Dei. I could still be a part of that. So it had that universal, no matter where you are in the world, you could sing those words and still be able to worship.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Yeah,
that
so that's the-
universal quality.
Yeah, universality.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's what Catholic means, right?
Yeah.
Universal.
Yeah, and I, you know, I've been a Catholic since 84, and I didn't really understand that and that was when I was around the age 30. I didn't understand that until I was almost 60. Isn't that the most amazing thing? Like I was saying, it was just an opening of light into my life, and you don't really understand it until you experience more of life.
And then you know what you were missing.
Yeah.
Somewhat.
Yeah.
Until you find the next thing you were missing.
Yes. But it's not like you can learn the Catholic faith in 1 year in RCIA. That's just the tip of the iceberg. It's just a wonderful journey. Wonderful, wonderful journey.
So, getting to this is all a preamble to the question. So what do you think makes good liturgical music? And from any aspect.
Well, it has to have a certain artistic excellence. It has to be something that brings you closer to God, and that is, when you hear it, it lifts your spirit. It makes you, it expands your being from this small physical being that we are. It brings you closer to heaven, and and then it has that universality, like I said. That.
So would you say that Gregorian chant has that universality?
Absolutely, yes.
Anything else, any other music that you think might do that?
Well, yeah, I mean, St. Matthew's Passion and all that, but again, it's not what you hear in a normal liturgy.
Well, you sing for evensong for the Anglican Ordinariate.
Yeah.
How would you say that music relates or fits in with this whole the universality and the fittingness?
Well, it doesn't do it as quite as excellently as the Latin Mass, but it's close. I mean, it's got great artistic merit, and it's beautiful, and it's like you said, it takes the text, but then it brings it closer to people. Almost, it makes the emotions of the Psalms come to life. I remember the one example of of that was, we were singing a certain psalm, and for the life of me, I can't remember which psalm it was. But I remember that they were singing this psalm in St. Paul's Cathedral in London when the bombs were dropping. And somehow, I think it would make them able to meet the horror of life with knowing that God was there in it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Psalms, you were talking about 30 to 60. I was just about 60 when I discovered the magnificence of the Psalms.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you
have to live a little bit.
Yeah, I did Vespers, and throughout the Mass, it's all Psalms. That's the funny thing, when people say, "Oh, Catholics don't know their Bible, but the Mass is just permeated. All the versicle and responses are from the Psalms.
Yeah.
You know, our help is in the name of the Lord who hath made heaven and earth.
Yes.
I mean, when I was younger, I thought that was just something that the Catholic Church made up.
Yeah.
And it's there in the Psalms. So, but, you know, really until I started, till I was pursuing oblature with the Benedictines, I didn't really appreciate the Psalms. Not so much as an artistic thing, but just as a spiritual thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what were we talking about before that?
Got me.
I know you. So you were saying it was artistic. It needs to be good. It needs to be excellent. It needs to be artistic.
Performed well. Sung
Performed well. That's one thing. I mean, we can do Gregorian chant, or we can do, 16th century Roman classical polyphony, or we can do the great hymns of Western culture. That can be from England, they can be from Germany, from France, few from Italy. Not a lot of great hymns from Italy, but some. O Sanctissimas from Italy.
Yeah.
Although the Germans claim it. Might be true, I don't know. I'm not a music historian.
Santa Lucia.
That's a Neapolitan song.
Yeah. Oh, is it? Okay.
But whatever we do, we have to do it well, don't you think?
Mm.
Do you think that's kind of lost?
I think that there was a great turmoil post Vatican II, not because Vatican II did anything wrong. I think it said all the right things that we needed to hear and had these wonderful documents, but it wasn't implemented very well and people misinterpreted it. So I think there was kind of a mess there for a while, but the thing is, we won't be lost forever, and when you have to face things in life that are really dire, then you can't face that. The songs that don't have depth and depth of meaning and beauty in them are not going to carry you through the hard times.
So church music shouldn't be trite.
Yes, that's right.
So, but doesn't necessarily mean it should be a Beethoven sonata.
No.
Do you think that there is a character to church music that's different from, say, opera or concert music or folk music or soiree music?
Yeah, I do, and I think that the just as it says in the documents from Vatican II, that Gregorian chant needs to have pride of place. That is the best church music there is, and we need all of the other types of music as well, but that's the music that's going to again, it's going to carry you through the difficult times in life.
I think that's true, and Pius X also says right next to that is classical Roman polyphony.
Yes, yeah.
As exemplified by Palestrina.
Yeah.
So, but you still have to do it well.
That's the problem. I think that is the hardest thing, is to to, in my time as being church choir in all different situations, in all different denominations, is to teach people how to do that well. That's always the very hardest
Well,
thing.
okay, let's move into the second question then, and you can answer this both as a singer and as a conductor. Is if there was one thing that you would like to improve upon, either yourself as a singer or the group that you conduct, what would that be?
Well, I've always thought that with choral music, that people have to understand that it's not just a bunch of people singing as loud as they can. It's understanding the music, it's blending with the other singers that you have, and teaching people how to do that is the big challenge of that, because everybody wants to be heard and be the loudest one. And
So it's not just singing at the same time, but it's actually singing together.
yeah, and making a blend, so that I always thought that was sort of as a person who was in choral music very young, and my mother was teaching the three of us girls to sing in trios before we could walk even,
Oh.
That was it. That was how I found God, really, was through that music, is because you have to forget yourself if you're going to make beautiful music with everyone else around you. And that's what
If I can move to the secular, I mean, I maybe think of the Andrews Sisters.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Fantastic.
You have to, there has to be an ensemble. I guess that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah. And that's the best example of God, and how we can be the community of Christ, how we can be the body of Christ in the world, is to learn to
good
do that
point.
together.
Yeah, because we're not. In fact, the church has always been very careful with solo singing.
Yeah.
Right? Because that doesn't represent the church.
Right.
The church is not individual. It's, even though our salvation is individual, the church is an ensemble, or a unity of souls, and our music should reflect that.
Yeah.
So whether we're talking about chant, where everyone's singing in unison, or we're talking about hymns where we're singing in parts, or polyphony where we're singing in interweaving parts, it's still an ensemble.
It is, yeah.
And so one person does not really take precedent over the other.
Yeah.
And so there's a bit of dying to oneself too, right?
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, I was an opera singer.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to be up on stage and singing your solo or your aria, and it's another thing to sing in the opera chorus, and then it's another thing to sing in a polyphonic choir or a schola, where you're singing for God, and you really have to die unto yourself, and that's a hard thing.
You're singing for the glory of God, yes.
Yeah, and so it's difficult, because as a musician, you're trying to perfect your art.
Right.
But at the same time, you realize you have to realize that you're doing it for the greater glory of God, and that you're actually nothing.
Yeah.
And
that is so difficult for us egocentric people.
It is.
We always want to do it our way, and to not be humble, and that's the big lesson in life, is to learn that humility.
Yeah. It's hard. I'm glad I have it down pat. My friend Ed, he's got humility down pat. In fact, he wrote a book, Humility and How I Achieved It. It is hard. It is hard because you're trying to perfect the talent that God gave you. Yet it's all got to be for Him, and you're nothing. So, and that's not, I mean, that's not false humility. I mean, humility. It's not false humility either. It's not false humility because it's the relationship between the finite and the infinite. So it doesn't matter how great you are. God is infinite, so that means you're nothing compared to the infinite. So to sum up the last question, so you'd say you'd want blend because that shows more the kind of the nature of the church in the music. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Aside from it being just good musically?
Yeah. It seems to me that I started to understand God when I was able to be in a choir where we were able to achieve that blend and that beauty and give it away to somebody else.
Mm.
And,
So when you say give it away to somebody else, what do you mean?
to the people that are listening.
Okay.
It's a gift. It's a self gift.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's marvelous. I think that's. Thank you, Terri.
You're very
God
welcome.
bless you, and
And you.
thank you, Walter,
You're welcome.
Mr. Gimbel. There we go.
Yeah, that's about all I can do.
Unbelievable.
That's about all I can
Very
do.
good.
Terri, holy
Top notch.
smokes. Wasn't that amazing?
Amazing. It truly was.